All right, here we go. All right, Boker Tov Chevra. Hope everyone had wonderful Chagim holidays. It's been a while, so let's just jump into it. Okay, I think what we called today's was the mistake that Noach made and what we have to make sure not to do. There's so much to talk about. All of Sefer Bereshis, the first of the 5 books, have so much that could be discussed. It's the hardest part is to pick one aspect, but I saw one idea which I think is extremely relevant to today specifically, the times that we're living, as well as I just think there's a takeaway for coming out of the holiday season as well. So Noach lives in very interesting times. Noach basically sees the destruction of the entire civilized world. So whenever we think, hey, life is kind of bad and we're worried about just about everything in life. Obviously, we're worried about Eretz Yisrael and Israel. We're worried what's going to happen south of the border, north of the border, and just about everything. Noach is a paradigm of like total destruction and everything falling apart. And then he's there after getting off the cruise for a while, and he's got a job. And what's his job? His job is to recreate the world and life and to start moving forward. What does Noach do? Noach gets off the boat. He plants out of the first thing of everything, a vineyard. He makes himself some wine, and he basically gets drunk. And it is very interesting if you just look at the story on its totality of coming off of destruction and then what to do afterwards. The storyline, as some of the commentaries point out, is a storyline that really is the human endeavor of life, meaning that people go through tragedies, not to the level of what Noach maybe went through, but every person is a world unto themselves, and we're all in boats that go through storms in life, and every storm eventually abates and calms down. And today we might call it trauma. Everybody goes through various instances and experiences of trauma. And the challenge isn't to evade trauma. The challenge is after that storm has passed, what does a person do? And one of the things that the Mishnayot, that our oral teaching speaks about Avram went through tremendous tests as well. The tests weren't really the problem being put into positions of tests, is what does a person do after going through that test, moving forward afterwards? And in fact, you'll see that in a couple of weeks after what happens with the 10th test of Isaac being the Akedat Yitzchak, being asked to sacrifice his son where he doesn't, and then he loses his wife right afterwards, right? The question is, what does he do after that? Does he give up and say, you know what, enough, or does he keep picking up and moving on? And when I thought about this idea of Noach and the storm and resilience and moving back, I think it's very much sort of the place that a lot of us, have to be and need to be in and need to learn from. Going through difficult times is not something that's a failure in people, and it's not something that's an aberration in Jewish history. Jewish history is full of challenges that happen, but the greatness of the person and the greatness of the people is what do we do afterwards that makes the big difference. They tell a story. I shared it with our shul over Yontiv. I love this story about a father that's really frustrated. Parents are very frustrated with their kid. He's just low yutzlach. He doesn't have his act together in anything. So they send them off to this Far East guru who says, you give us your kid, we'll send you home a mensch, right? We'll whip him into shape. Pays an exorbitant amount of money to this martial arts guru. Says, give him a year, you come back in a year, the kid will be a totally different kid. Pays an exorbitant amount, goes home. A year later, he travels over to the Far East, meets the sensei. Sensei says, we're going to put on a little demonstration, me and your son. I want you to watch him. So they get onto the mat, and the son throws this tremendous punch at the sensei, and the sensei dodges it, pulls his arm, throws him to the ground, pins him, game over. Kid gets back up again. He goes for this like legs kick. Again, the guy jumps. He's seen it all, nails the guy down, falls down time and time again. Once, twice, 3, 5, 50 times already. The kid keeps trying to do something, and the master totally, totally destroys him, and he ends up on the map. And then afterwards, he says, okay, finished. He goes over to the father. He said, what did you think? And the father is like fuming. He's like, I just paid you an exorbitant amount. I can't believe what just happened. He says, what do you mean? He says, you destroyed the kid. He says, no, 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 you have it all wrong. He says, you were looking at the wrong thing. You looked at your kid being thrown down 50 times. What you should have been looking at was your kid getting up 50 times after being thrown down. That the real strength of the individual is not to evade being thrown down. I think it was Muhammad Ali who said something along the lines of, it's not how many punches you take, it's how much you can get back up afterwards. The one who wins in the round isn't the one that doesn't get knocked down in life. It's the one who realizes that you will get knocked down in life, and as a result of that, you have to get back up and rebuild. Noah's big mistake was he went through this traumatic experience, right? And the world had been destroyed in front of him, and he had an opportunity to recreate the world the way that it was meant to be after going through that catastrophe. It doesn't explain the catastrophe or why society became what it was, but it does sit there and pin the responsibility, or what I often like to say, the opportunity on the individual to say, great, now that we've passed the storm, what is it that I'm meant to do? Right? And we often look at, sort of this this struggle between the focus on the past and the ability to move past it in the future. They tell a joke that one of these business leaders went to this big leadership conference for, in order to be the best manager he can in his company, and he comes back and calls all his workers together. He says, listen, from now on, I don't want to hear about any problems. Nobody has problems in this entire company. All we have are opportunities, right? Opportunities. Everything's an opportunity. So fine, everybody's excited. No such thing as problems, opportunities, opportunities. Guy knocks on the door a couple of weeks later. He says, listen, boss, I got to talk to you about a problem that I have. He says, He says, no problems. He says, no, I'm telling you, this is a problem that I have. He says, I told you, we don't have problems. All we have is opportunities. So he says, okay, listen, I want to talk to you about a drinking opportunity that I have. Sometimes we have things that are massive challenges, right? And they seem like they're insurmountable. But we know from our lives that anybody who's been through any challenge in life usually becomes the superstar of being able to be the advocate in those areas because they understand what that challenge is. So a person like Noah who sees destruction in the world and sees what like when society becomes, irredeemable, literally, right, has the ability to recreate all of society. Granted, it's difficult, and granted, he has to work through everything that he'd gone through, but if he comes out the other end, he becomes the greatest advocate of morality and kindness and realizing the importance of rebuilding. And I think that's a message that, especially in the time that we're in, that we have to realize as well. Yes, everybody has gone through collectively, is going through collectively. At Yom Tovim, Rosh Hashanah, it was beautiful, it was powerful and meaningful by us. And then as soon as Yantiv was over, you open the news and you see beautiful faces of young soldiers or even older soldiers who were miluimnikim, whose lives were taken way too soon. And you feel this kick in the gut, like, when's it going to end? And on one hand, we don't have that control of what is obviously going to be happening tomorrow. But I think the challenge is to be able to realize that the values that we have to rebuild the type of world that we want is that much more important. And it was driven home, and I shared this on the podcast. I'm happy to send it to you if you send me an email if you want. I'd seen a story, which I mentioned a couple days ago, about a Rabbi Avi Goldberg that was Hashem Yikam Damam. He was murdered up in Lebanon, left a wife and 8 children. And at the Shiva, the wife had said that everyone is invited to the Shiva. All politicians are invited from any and every side are invited to come to the Shiva. She says, but there's one rule. If you're coming to the Shiva, then you have to come with someone who's in the opposition. I need you and the person who's on the other side to come together. And I was like, she said, that's what Avi fought his entire life for, to bring Achdus to Klal Yisrael. So here's a person who's experiencing the greatest personal tragedy of her life, losing her husband, becoming a widow, having 8 children that are now don't have a father. And his whole message was, how do you sit there and bring Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people, together? And it had his Shiva, right? Rather than sitting there, and obviously the pain is something that's indescribable, she said, but wait, his mission was to create this, and this is what she puts out. You're all welcome. And I shared it, and a friend of mine in Israel sent me a picture yesterday. V'kachaya, that's exactly what happened. He sent me a picture of 2 ladies from the opposite sides of the political spectrum who showed up to the Shiva, sat down together, and were Menachem Aval, comforted the mourner through that. Right? It's not easy to be able to pick up the pieces after tragedy, but there's a greatness and there's even a strength and an opportunity at those moments that people are more open to be and willing to be able to do certain things because they realize and they see what the tragedy and trauma is, and they don't want that to be the re-experience. So Noach unfortunately lives in that. He goes out, he plants a vineyard, he drinks himself literally in sorrow, and we are not B'nai Noach. Right? We're B'nai Yisrael. We're B'nai Avram. Avram is our first forefather. Avram is the one who sees this. The Medrash tells us a house that's burning, and he says, God, this house is on fire. And he doesn't say, that's it. This is horrible. God says, so what are you going to do about it? And he starts his journey. Lech Lecha. He starts walking and doing and creating and being and becoming. And I think that that message, as we read Parshas Noach and we go through this entire transition, right? We start with Bereshis. Bereshis is about new beginnings, right? God creates new beginnings. Noach means, what is it? The word menucha means rest. Noach didn't put in the effort. He rested, right? Next Parsha by Avram says, Lech Lecha. No, 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 no. The point of life is to be a holech, to be going forward, to always be taking the next steps, to not live in the past, but realize that they're new beginnings, and a person has to be able to take everything that they experience to create and build and be a bigger self than they were beforehand as well. And when we change the self, we change the world along that path as well. So I just thought that was one of the many beautiful ideas that you'll find in this week's Parsha. But really, it's not about being knocked down. It's about getting back up. I remember, and we'll end because in a couple of weeks, that happens to be Rabbi Sachs's yahrzeit. I remember Rabbi Sachs told a story about how when he was being tested for becoming the chief rabbi, aside from, I don't know what they do for the test, but he mentioned that there was a physical as well. So clearly, I would not be able to be a chief rabbi anywhere. There's a physical that happens, and they put him on like a treadmill or something like that. And then afterwards, they're doing all these tests. So he's like, you wanted to see what my endurance was, how fast I can run, how far I can run. They said, no, 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 it's all fine. He says, so what are you testing? He says, all we want to know is after you've gone through this intense run that's lifted your heartbeat, how long does it take for your heartbeat to come back to normal again? The health of the individual is not that sometimes their heartbeat doesn't start beating fast and there are certain challenges they go through. Everybody does. The health of the person is how quickly a person can go back to maintain who they are, what they need to be back at their normal level of operation in order to be able to focus on moving forward and not to be living in that fast heartbeat space of the past. But after that's passed, after the run is stopped, what a person can do in terms of moving forward, and are they back in the game and able to go ahead and operate as well. So it's our bracha to please God. Moving forward this year, this first time we're sort of getting after Parshas Bereshis. We weren't together because it was Yontiv, but the journey is a journey that's important, and we learn from the past, we experience the past, we struggle with things in the past, but we have to always move forward. Noach, unfortunately, was unable to. He had that opportunity and wasn't able to capitalize on that. Next week, we'll realize and learn about what it means to be part of the Abrahamic tradition, who starts us all off, who realizes that that's really the key of life. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will send us punches. Why? Not for now. Another time we'll discuss. But every punch that we take, we're able to get back up again. And when we get back up, we don't just get back up and do what we did before. We get up and we're even stronger. We saw it in the last generation. We saw what happened after their, indescribable trauma that happened 80 years ago, and how they rebuilt literally not only our entire community in Toronto, they built Israel with their own hands and recreated everything. They had every right to say, you know what, forget it. I'm throwing in the gloves. They were knocked down. They got back up. And that's what they do. That's what we must do. And that is the strength and the greatness of the Jewish people as well. So, Chevra, we'll stop the recording. Wishing everyone a good Shabbos. Obviously, if anyone has any questions, feel free. And Zahu.